Good afternoon, folks. My name is Asad Ahmed, and I'm going to be your industry advisor for retail when it comes to NetSuite. So everything with an ERP, everything with manufacturing, accounting, that's what I help out with. We'll pass it on over to Tony from Hammitt.
A little closer.
Is that? A little closer, he says. Is this? Oh, there we go. It's like, now I sound like I'm on one of those stages in Comedy Cellar. This is what comedians sound like, but I will not do any comedy, period. So this is Tony Dickerson on my left, Chief Cheerleader for Hammitt, a luxury handbag company. He's going to give you a little bit of his insights on Hammitt and about himself.
Hey everyone, I'm Tony Drockton, the founder of Hammitt. We're from right here in the South Bay, Manhattan Beach, California. A luxury handbag brand that I launched in summer of 2008. And if you don't remember that time, that was right before the Great Recession. And here we are 15 years later, and I'm up here on stage going to talk about tips for standing out on the shelf. And to set that up, I'll share with you the little bit of that journey to get here. And so we launched in 2008, my third startup. I really felt that we would just explode like everything else, and the Great Recession hit. And that's when I had to figure out a new industry and a new way of doing business. And we battled through every year with some growth and a focus on really creating a luxury handbag brand that was in the white space between all of the American best known brands and all of the European luxury houses that have been around a long time. And hopefully today I'll share a couple of tips of what got us to where we are today. But spoiler alert, we now have 2 of our own retail stores and a third opening. Half of our business is done online on Hammitt.com, and the other half is, believe it or not, in 900 brick and retail mortar partners, from the smallest mom and pops in every state to the Montage Hotel, every one of them, the Four Seasons, and 2 of the family-owned department stores. And I'm really proud that we've been able to build the business through all the channels despite how we started and what's happening today. So I'll pass it on over.
And then we have David Nino from the Allure store. David, not a retailer, something very different. Do tell us everything about yourself.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Asad. Thank you, Tony, and also Megan. Welcome everyone to FounderMade. I'm David DeNino, and I launched with Store Group the Allure store about a year and a half ago. We are Condé Nast's retail partner, and our mission is basically to find the intersection between media, retail, online consumer spending patterns, how people use content to influence purchasing decisions. And we function essentially as the physical impression of Allure. And so when you think of media titles, whether it's Essence doing Essence Fest, or you think of Vogue every year at the Oscars, you think of Refinery with what they do, 29 rooms. We see a presence for media companies. Also, for those paying attention, Hypebeast now is a store. High Snobiety is also doing this in New York. Podinky started out as a watch blog. You see a lot of media titles, whether they're legacy print houses like Condé or digital first outlets. They're saying we can take our editorial point of view, we can take our reach, we can take our audience, and we can create a brick and mortar experience. It's in a retail skin. It feels and it looks like retail, but actually it functions much more as a kind of dynamic marketing, top of funnel advertising play. So brands use us. You know, of course, the topic of the conversation here is standing out on retailers' shelves. I think part of what we do even precedes that, and it's how can we help get retailers' attention on young brands, on brands that want to test out hypotheses in a retail setting, but before they kind of take a leap with the big boxes, the Targets, or the Cost Bars, or the Detoxes. So that's kind of what we, that's the service that we provide to brands. And again, it's all done under kind of an editorial halo, which brings credibility to the exercise that sometimes other players out there in the space, you know, you guys are all familiar, Showfields, Neighborhood Goods, Naked Retail, Beta. These are all kind of similar concepts that are in general, whether it's media related or not, it's this turning of a retail brick and mortar setting into something a little bit more hybrid as opposed to strictly a distribution channel.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Tony, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I can talk forever. Go ahead.
He actually can. I've worked with Tony quite a bit. So when Tony starts talking, it's going to be sunrise for us. So we'll probably have to stay for dinner and breakfast talking about it. But you know what, Tony? I'm going to put some questions out towards you on this one. We talked earlier in our prep calls, prep conversations, we talked about supply chain. We talked about filling the shelf, finding the right product mix. As you know, when you talk about standing out on a retailer's shelf with the right product mix, what are the things that you're doing on your side to stand out?
Before I get to the right product mixed on the shelf, let me explain a bit about the Hammitt business model, because I'm only speaking from my perspective. I actually wore this shirt for everybody today. And if this doesn't make you cringe, this is what's happening right now. Sale, sale, sale. Yesterday, we sent out our first email that said 0% off because we're worth it. And it crushed it. So the Hammitt business model is aligned with luxury. We are a non-promotional brand. Drop the mic. We don't allow our 900 stores that carry us to put us on sale, ever. And we don't put our products in promotional stores. That's where I come from. So everything after this, understand, it's the world I live in. So then how do you stick out on the shelf when that's your business model? Well, we focus on our product first, and the quick answer is we iterate product season by season based on past success, but we also never repeat, because for fashion items, people want to buy something that they know is not going to be on that shelf forever. And if you try to sell it for too long, you end up with markdowns. But we focus all of our energy on that core collection, on that staple piece. So well more than half our revenue comes from a very small set of core SKUs that's been selling anywhere from 5 up to 13 years for our company, and that drives our revenue. So again, how do you make core stick out on the shelf? To me, it's all about focusing on not just the customer and how they'll find you on the shelf, but if you're trying to be in retail partner stores, especially in my luxury space, we've always focused on the associates on the selling floor. So we've done 35 trunk shows in the last 2 months all around the country with our retailing partners. For anyone that's been in the industry for more than 10 years, that was the norm. Trunk shows were everywhere, and they just sort of faded away. I think we're the only single brand doing trunk shows in the 2 department stores we're in right now, not just in the handbag space, but anywhere. People forgot how important it is to get out and be with your customers and be on the floor with the associates. So the combination of non-promotional allows the associate to really lean into the brand and lean into the product, because they're not going to ever get showroomed. They know that if the customer falls in love with a Hammitt, they're going to come back and they're going to get it from them because they did a really good job. So that's it for now.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for that. So customers falling in love with your products. Tony keeps reminding me to keep the mic closer to my face here, so I'll try remembering that. David, I'm going to switch a little bit towards you. Again, I love what you said earlier. You're helping brands do non-retail exercises in a retail type of a location. One of the other things that you talked about was when you are trying to get shelf space is continuity of brands, the depth of the product, its product line. What are the things that you're doing for new brands that are trying to break in to these retail spaces? What are the things that they can do to get some shelf space?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we try to pose that question to all our brands even before they join. Is think of what does a year down the road, 2 years down the road look like? What does your SKU catalog look like? And what are the products that you want retailers to pay attention to? And as kind of a proving ground, the Allure store and our showroom really is, if you look at it, it's kind of a showroom and an event venue. Brands can come in and test out different, not only hypotheses in terms of what sticks from a marketing perspective, but from a product perspective. So how do people come in and engage with certain products? Our store is not optimized, really designed architecturally to hit a cash register and leave with a bag. It's designed for everybody to try everything for 30, 40 minutes, 50 minutes per visit. So for brands that think about continuity into retail partners, this is a great way to conduct field work before you go into a retail partner and have a sense of insight and knowledge based off your 6 months or your 9 months or your 12 months at Allure store exercises. So you get off on a better foot with retailers. And even for brands that are already in retailers, it's also about, well, what will you introduce in the future at those retailers? And we're not talking just products. This could be range extensions, it could be category extensions, but in particular, what our emphasis is on is IRL programming, right? You can call it experiential, you can just call it eventing, you can call it field work. Doing trade marketing in person at the point of sale where consumers can be present is probably the biggest benefit that brands get out of our program. And then they bring that back to retailers. So if you're carried on at Sephora, at Ulta, or at a smaller beauty store, and you can show them examples of, hey, we are pros at eventing. We know how to do field work, low scale, 1-2 brand ambassadors on the floor doing demos, right? What Tony said about trunk shows, the same thing exists in beauty, right? They're called sample or demo days, right? You can have founder workshops, you can have services, right? Our platform, our store allows services in the store so brands come in, and if it's successful and it sticks, they've got something to go back to a retail partner and say, hey, I can throw this on your floor. And retailers love it because they want the added footfall and they want something that's an appeal to their shoppers as well.
Absolutely, Tony.
As a follow-up to that, I'm a big fan of this model. I'm speaking to founders here or people that have an idea. There's so many great ways to test your idea. And the biggest test to me is if a wholesale buyer orders it at full margin. Or you can go to a retail store. That is the low-hanging fruit that I think a lot of people have bypassed on their brand journey. So we're 15 years in, so the way that we test is a little bit differently, but we still test all of the time. We do limited edition drops once a week by SMS. And by the way, if they don't sell, nobody ever sees them again. And if they sell, we use that data to work it into a design down the road, which might even be 6 to 9 months off. But that's how you can really test your product.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so doing a lot of testing. Tony, I want to take this conversation in a slightly different direction. You mentioned earlier, you started your journey in 2008. 15 years later, you're hitting your second slowdown. We're not going to call it the R word. We don't use that around here in retail at all. You have grown. You have steadily grown. You have grown your physical presence. You have grown your retailer presence. You're a brand that's online. You're a D2C. Tell me a little bit about what are the things that you have done to aid that growth. What is the technology that you're using? How is technology helpful? How are you growing your team as well?
Well, I'll start on technology. I'm very selective on our tech stack. I like simplicity. We did launch on Oracle NetSuite 14 years ago when it wasn't cool. And Shopify in 2014. New Order, which is a wholesaling software, about 2012. And then we built around that with the Klavios of the world, HubSpots we're putting on now. But the most important part of that tech stack is I've always kept it simple. So just like your people, sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. So it isn't that you need all the bells and whistles of all that software, but allowing it to talk to each other to get rid of as much friction as possible, all the way down to the retail selling floor with Shopify POS, for example. It is really what you need to focus on in order to be successful in today's environment. And then when it comes to people, it really is the same thing. I have a couple of my team members right here, Nikki and Maya. They worked for us in the earliest of days. We really pride ourselves on hiring powerful, energetic individuals, and we can train the rest. People they want to learn, they want to grow. So we have a very young team. Besides my CEO, that's older than me, so he's old, I guess. Like, whee! Anyways, and when it comes to people, I mean, higher personality, higher work ethic. And if you do that, you can train the rest. We don't ever hire for a position. We've tried that, and the turnover just seems to always happen.
Yeah. So hire for the personality, not for the role. Also, one of the things that you don't know, Tony gave a promotion to her marketing manager to a marketing director. She proclaimed that position earlier, so congratulations on that one. Does it come with a raise? We don't know. I heard there's an extra Keurig for you every morning now. Or
Can I add one more thing? I'm not dropping anything that's like new right here. Like in the end, if something worked in retail 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, it's going to work now, even going into maybe a horrible period, and it's going to work in 10 years from now. I think too many people get into whatever industry and they want the latest, greatest. They want the bells and whistles. They want to jump right into hyper-segmentation and specialization. But the low-hanging fruit for building Hammitt was always just doing the best, the simplest way, like making the product just a little bit better, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think we're going to have a conversation about supply chain and supply chain management. I think that's though we don't want to talk about it.
No.
It's
Who here had problems with supply chain, founders? Anyone?
Should we talk about that, or because we literally were behind the stage?
How about 10% of my cost structure went up this year? That's painful.
And Tony did, again, we had a lot of conversations behind the white screen or the blue screen, whatever you want to call it. Had one simple thing to say. I think, Tony, you'll put it best on your part, talking about supply chain. What are you gearing your supply chain for? What are you doing on your end?
So the original manufacturer that started making my handbags still makes them today. And if you keep it simple, and you build a relationship with the founders of your manufacturers, and you have a two-way trust, you can get through anything. So even when we couldn't pay our bills and we were really late, he always shipped. And even during the great COVID bust, he kept making product. In the end, it's about that relationship. So the more you complicate your supply chain, in order to lower the cost, maybe you're sourcing all over the world, and then it literally, the last 2 years, you got spanked because you could not get your product made. So we've kept it simple, one factory, and we added a second factory, which is the same owner in another country recently. So I think for all your supply chain, again, simplicity will get you through anything, including the next couple of years.
Absolutely, and I think that's the biggest message that we should have around supply chain is keep it simple. Driving costs down is essential for a business, but if it comes at a cost where you have nothing to put on your shelves, then it's really not driving the cost down. David, I'm going to switch back on over to you. Your technology conversation was very different when we were having our internal conversations. You mentioned you are adding as you're growing, because again, your model is not that of a typical retailer.
Yeah, so the concept is it's very new, meaning media and retail, and how do you bring that to a permanent structure, permanent format? You've seen flashes of it, as I said, at cultural moments or Coachella or Essence Fest, etc. But how do you maintain that 365? And the biggest way we do it is feedback from our brands, right? So that's who we serve ultimately. We want to create an environment that consumers come to, spend time in, hang out, meet like-minded beauty enthusiasts, and don't have the pressure of a sale, but do have the pressure of learning, education, discovery, finding out what's around the corner. We're located, for those of you familiar with the geography of New York, we're 2 blocks away from a Sephora, right? People that know the product that they want, it's the same mascara or eye mask that they always buy, they just can go to Broadway and Spring and buy it. We try to cultivate kind of a room, and this also goes to the merchandising from the editorial team at Allure, of younger, indie, D2C brands, but particularly what is the next story coming around category corners, right? So to evolve the program so it suits brands who ultimately pay to join this marketing program the same they would cut an insertion order in traditional media, right? Whether it would be print or broadcast or dark social or whatever it may be. In order to do that, we have to constantly take feedback from brands. What are your goals? What do you want to get out of this? You have 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. Treat it as your own pop-up. What are the things you want us to provide for you? And so we've only been open 15 months, but we evolve it each quarter. as brands exit and new brands enter, we take that feedback and we say, what have you liked about it? What has moved the needle for you? What do you think downstream you will bring to retailer partners? Because ultimately, any brand that is here, either they want to be in a large retail partner, or they already are and they want to do more business there. So they're driving awareness that their products and their brands can be found at these larger sales, traditional distribution channels. So as we look into next year, and we're expanding beyond New York, we're going to have a mobile truck that's going to ply the streets of LA 7 days a week. We're opening a store in LA at the end of next year. And we're looking at tried and true field work marketing approaches and asking ourselves, how do we productize them? How do we get a mobile truck and productize it, but still keep it under the Allure editorial halo? How do we do sample sales, right? For fashion, sample sales have been a go-to. And we're not talking just day-long sample sales, but places like Woodbury Commons, right? I don't know what the equivalent is out here in LA, but when you talk about outlet stores where brands are able to take, right, exactly, and that's people's approach. And particularly in beauty, we all know it's not so secret in beauty, as products expire, or as they get discontinued, or as they get shipped back to you from retailers because they have RTV clauses in their contract, where do those products end up? Many brands turn a blind eye and they end up in the hands of an unauthorized third-party reseller or on Amazon. So we think about how can we bring something that doesn't have that cringe aspect like a Woodbury Commons to beauty, where brands can offload inventory that otherwise might get destroyed or sold on 10 cents on the dollar. So there's new components to the program that we're bringing. Sample sales we're excited about. Big eventing is another thing. I mean, most of our team at the Allure store comes from an experiential background. We're big believers in experiential for the past 20 years, and particularly in beauty, that is such a sensorial kind of vertical, right? People want to use it. It's so saturated. There's so much noise in beauty. One way to cut above it, it's kind of a cynical answer, is be noisier, right? Be noisier, and that means getting out there in front of your consumers and doing splash-worthy programming. So that's what we'll be bringing in 2023. And so we think that that's a big part of it that brands will take advantage of.
Tony, anything to add on your side?
Oh, no, it's great. I think it's perfect.
All right, so now we're going to go off script, and I've closed my book down over here. And this is both Tony and David. What are your thoughts? Like, is retail dead? Is you seeing any resurgence there? I know this is
me. So the question
you're expanding your footprint.
Is retail dead? Bad retail died 20 years ago, but there's thriving retails in whatever segment you want to be in. And that doesn't mean that Walmart is anything worse than the highest category. Wherever you're participating, their retail is thriving, first of all. So for Hammitt, as I said, we're in the luxury space. The specialty retail business is exploding. Ours grew every year prior to and through COVID. Our department stores that we're in, if I can give a shout out, Von Maur and Dillard's, amazing, family-owned, family-run, stood behind us. Our business has more than doubled during the pandemic, and it's going to continue to grow. And we opened up a store in the middle of the pandemic, and we have a third one that we're going to open in December. So, no, retail is not dead. It's just that now, if you want to be a retailer, you need to decide where you want to play. And then you need to find the tools, technology tools, in order to make sure you can play in that space. And the best example I can talk about retail would be Starbucks. Who here drinks Starbucks? And if you think about the reason you drink it is because of that little app that took away all the friction. You can order on the app, you can walk in and pick it up, and you can leave. That's still retail, but it's retail with the technology component. The Amazon just walkout stores, they just opened them up in some of the stadiums. That's retail right now. You got to figure out where your brand sits along the distribution channel and how you'll be able to participate the most successful way for it to be. But I think the next 20 years, physical retail is the only place to be, and the digital component is just part of the transaction.
Perfect. And this is something that we have seen from a technology standpoint for our customers across the board is customers tend to go from many different channels are driven to retail. Because again, what was considered the convenience of getting a 2-day delivery now is really getting squashed by, hey, I want that product in the next 2 hours. So a lot of it is what Starbucks, you mentioned, the Starbucks model is, I'll order on the app, I'm gonna walk into a store, I'm gonna walk out with it immediately. David, on your side, you're kind of going through a very different exercise at this point in time. What are your thoughts on retail and retail's future in that end?
Yeah, we've got lots of thoughts on it. And
remember, we only have 5 minutes and 2 seconds, so go.
Here's my thinking on it. And we're careful how we interchange the words retail and brick and mortar. So while I certainly don't think retail is dying or going away, I do believe it's transformed, right? Past tense. I think that e-com and online purchasing has permanently taken, this may be a little bit divergent from Tony's point of view, but I think it's permanently taken consumption, sales dollars out of retail doors. However, we think that brick and mortar is typically in a retail setting. So we like retail skinned environments, but we think brick and mortar is actually more important than ever, right? D2C brand, I can't tell you how many beauty brands, D2C brands, even prior to working at the Allure store, I worked with a bunch of D2C brands on physical activations. They all know that they need physical touch points. And they also all know, particularly in beauty, that they need retail partners, large retail partners. So we think that brick and mortar is as essential as ever. And we challenge retail partners, not just brands to think about it, but partners that we've got like Ulta, like Amazon Beauty. I know that they're shuttering their stores right now, but let's use the Ulta example. We just wrapped up a really large partnership with Ulta. Ulta thinks all the time, how do we take our stores, our millions of square feet, of aggregate retail doors across America, and how do we make them where there's other transactions occurring in the room that aren't sales? Right, and that's how we look at it, that brick and mortar is here to stay. Consumers crave it, particularly young ones, particularly Gen Z. These are folks that were born with a phone in their hands. They've their whole life been able to buy everything they want at a click. You know, for folks our age, that wasn't always the case. So there's still a novelty and convenience to buying everything you want at the click of a button. But for younger consumers that already had that, there's a craving for physical experiences. And other than, Coachella, Miami Swim Week, Lollapalooza, etc., people are looking for permanent locations to do it. I jump back all the time. We drew a lot of inspiration. If anyone here has kids and they know the store Camp, C-A-M-P, right? It's a toy store. It's a store for kids' clothing and kids' toys. The programming they put in this place, whether it's what they did with Peppa Pig, and then they have something with like other kids' franchises. It's an elevated Chuck E. Cheese where people are hanging out as much as they are shopping, and I think that ultimately leads to better results for brands. You see plenty of smaller retailers also doing this. You see this with ALD, of course, the clothing that everyone knows on Mulberry Street, and lots of them. You know, the ubiquity of cafes is another thing. I mean, heck, even Nordstrom with the pop-up at Nordstrom. You know, retailers want to dedicate pieces of their valuable floor plan, right? Inches, cubic feet, to non-sales exercises. You can call this eventing, you can call it Costco handing you samples, right, at an end cap. So we think a lot of that you'll see more of in the future in retail.
So David, how do we reconcile? So I'll give you a story of, you can go to my website, and this is the reconciliation. Right now, live on our site, if you click Klarna, which used to be Hero, that will actually ping all of my sales associates on my retail floor that's open 7 days a week in real time. They can pick it up and they can have a one-on-one chat. When they pick it up, they get to see every product that person has seen in their real-time journey. So right when they pick it up, they literally know what they're already looking at. And then they can complete the transaction either by them calling the store or by them sending the link on Shopify and talking. This is the real time and by the way, none of this is expensive. NetSuite plugs into Shopify, Shopify plugs into Klarna. My inventory now is able to be seen by everybody, everywhere, at every time. And it's a simple solution that you can do even in non-owned retail stores if you choose to. But that's, I think, what's happening now is physical, digital, phygital. You really have to look at the whole picture from the customer's perspective. When they're on a website, if they want to talk to someone, they really like talking to somebody that's sitting in one of your stores, which by the way, Ulta is doing this. Untuck It does it. A lot of other brands.
Yeah, perfect. Again, I think, folks, we're just about to wrap up over here in the last 30 seconds. A couple of things that we'll just mention in closing remarks over here. And I obviously thank my panelists, Tony and both David, for talking about retail. The key thing that we always think about is retail is not anything different from what it was 40 years ago, 30 years ago. We just have additional channels added into that. Key thing is, take the friction out. Again, there's thousands of models that you'll look outside where there's friction, where there's not friction. If you add friction, people are leaving your stores. The key thing about your supply chain, again, keep it simple. Make sure you have the right vendors, get the product mix in the right way. Look at what your demand is, what are people asking for. That's what you need to have on your shelves, because if you have the right mix of products on the shelf, people are going to keep coming back and wanting additional experiences with you. Tony, David, last few thoughts.
Get on NetSuite, because Asad works for him.
The last thought I'll share is it's maybe a bit of a philosophical one, but when folks think of retail, just understand it's another touch point. It doesn't need to be the last touch point. That was, I think, how we reconcile our views of where sales dollars are spent online versus brick and mortar. It can go from brick and mortar and end up as an online purchase, right? The usual paradigm was that's the end of the journey. A cash register at Ulta. Well, there's ways in brick and mortar environments, whether it's ours or whether it's more innovative retailers like the ones I mentioned earlier, where the physical touch point actually might precede the purchase, which occurs ultimately online. So think of retail as another place to talk to your consumer, not just the end of a journey where you'll take their credit card.